So now we're going to have a quick look at the other panels over on the right hand side of the develop module. As I said, most of the time I'm living in the basic module where I do my universal edits. I really don't spend much time at all in all of the other panels. In fact, some of the panels I never use, some of the panels I've never used ever. But I'll just quickly go through and try and explain what they do. There are a few bits in them that I do really like and I do use, but definitely not all. So the tone curve. Now the tone curve you can use to affect the overall brightness and contrast of the image. So what you can do is just have a little bit of a play around. Now, of course, there's darks over here and highlights over here. So just have a little bit of a play. This image that I've got hasn't been edited. That's why it looks a little bit dull, because it's come in its raw state. Now, if you can see, as I'm adjusting this tone curve, the sliders underneath it are changing. I really don't like this way of doing things. I like to adjust the sort of the bits at the top in the basic panel, the highlights. But I suppose everybody works in different ways. It's just not for me. Let's say, for example, you were to do loads of stuff on there, but you wanted to see what it looked like without you having done those bits. There's this little icon here. If you click it, it shows you what your picture will look like without the effect of that particular panel. And save me going all the way back and starting all over again. I'm just going to turn it off because I don't like it, and I'm going to just get rid of that. Now underneath that, this is one I do like. HSL stands for hue, saturation and luminance. And here you can change individually all the colours in your picture, and it's fantastic. Now at the moment you can see I've just got the yellow one selected. I could have red, orange, green, blue, purple and magenta. But if I wanted to see them all, I click all and then you've got them all listed. I personally like this view. Say for example, in this particular image, I could probably, let's get some greens and let's make them a little bit more saturated. So if we go over here to the greens and let's bring this saturation up, you can see the greens. Well, you can again start to overdo it, but you can change the greens. Now let's change the hue of the greens. Oh yeah, look at that. That's looking really bad. Or you can make them yellow. Oh yuck. You can have some real fun in this panel actually. Luminance is basically the brightness. So I can make those greens brighter or darker. Now this area is not so bad, but you can see here it's really not working very well at all. But again, all these things depend on your own particular preference. What about the blues? Let's see the blues. Saturation of the blues, way too much. The hue, oh no, no, let's not go for that. Oh yeah, so that's looking pretty bad right now. Now there's not too much other colour here. This is one way I can make skies look more blue than they were before. I mean, quite a lot of the time I'm taking pictures when there are blue skies anyway, but this is a great way of making it more blue. I mean, this particular blue doesn't need to get any more blue, but let's just try it anyway. Wow, really quite blue. Or you can get rid of the blue. I don't like that at all. Let's take it back. Anyway, let's go back to this one. So this is a really good panel. I really like this panel very much. But I'm just going to turn off the effects of this panel and close it up. Split toning, so you can colour the shadows and highlights separately as opposed to the whole image. Now what I would suggest with this is just, if you like it, just have a play around. Oh yeah, we're not doing so well here. You see, this is, I mean, I'm sure everybody works in different ways. I just haven't ever really got on with it, that's all. But like a lot of these things, I think you should just open it up, have a play with it, and see how you work best. That's not too bad. Actually, it's looking a bit better than it did, because the bits that should be browner and more yellow are, as opposed to how it was before, where everything kind of had like this sort of green tint to it. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on the split toning. Anyway, let's close that up. Now, detail, I actually think that a lot in here is a bit too complicated and a bit too much for my particular course. You can go online and see lots of different videos and explanations about all the various elements of this panel. I just think it's a bit too complicated for what we need it to do. Now, sharpening is pretty obvious. You are sharpening it, but the thing is, what happens when you import an image into Lightroom, it will automatically apply some sharpening to your picture. And so you may or may not want to put some more sharpening on it, depending on your particular preference. What I prefer to do is I prefer to go into individual sections of images and sharpen them with the local adjustment tools up the top. Now, noise reduction, we've already talked about noise. This is handy when you have a lot of noise over your overall picture. You're not going to really see much of an effect here, except for the fact that when you reduce the noise, you're also reducing some of the detail as well. It's just beginning to look a little bit softer. Now, the thing is, sometimes I quite like that effect. I quite like the effect that it goes a little bit softer. It can look a little bit dreamy and a little bit, I don't know, just quite like it. It really depends on the picture. I'm not going to go into any more about the various elements of sharpening and noise reduction, because I just think they're a bit too complicated for this course. But there are lots of blogs and videos out there if you want to look into it further. Lens correction I've never used. With the lens correction, you can fix lens problems like distortion or vignetting or perspective correction. The thing is, I quite like distortion, and so that's one of the reasons why I use my wide angle lens. I don't want to correct it, but this would be the place. If you do want to, you can do that. I say, I've never done it before. I can't really comment. I don't want to do it. It's not my cup of tea. So again, if you want to use this panel here, you're going to have to go online and look for video on YouTube or something. Transform. This again is something that I have never used. I don't particularly want to use. I like distorted pictures. I'm not bothered about whether lines are particularly straight or not. So the transform panel can help you correct lines or correct tilted or skewed perspectives. I can imagine perhaps if you're doing pictures of buildings, for example, you might want to change things up that way. Let's just have a little go here. Oh, look, you can do all sorts of weird and wacky things, which I don't particularly like. But what I would suggest is you just go and crack on and have a good go at this, because you might find that you do like the effects in the transform panel. So underneath transform it says effect. Now again, I think that some of these bits are a bit too complicated for this particular course. I'm just going to go over to this image because I don't like looking at the unedited picture. Now, I a lot do a post-crop vignetting. Now, post-crop means it will put a vignette on the picture after you have cropped it. So, for example, if I were to put a vignette on this, and if I just, it says amount, and I just bring this down, you can see it's putting a vignette on it. Now, that can look terrible if you put too much. Remember when I said about the navigator? And it helps me to see if I've overdone it. Now, obviously, it's clear that I've overdone it, and you can see it in the big window, but I find it a lot easier sometimes to see if I've overdone it in the small window. So in the big window, I think, okay, that doesn't look too bad. But if I look over to the smaller window, the navigator rather over here, I think, yeah, it's a bit too much. I've done a bit too much there. So I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. I'm not going to go into these other options underneath. Grain, you can add grain. That's not my cup of tea either. But you know, some people quite like that kind of effect, and why not? You know, why not? If you like it, go for it. Grain, you can add grain. You, oh dearie me, that's not looking. No, it's, yeah, it's not. It's not. It's not for me. No. So I'm going to get rid of that. But I do like the vignetting. So again, just to remind you, post crop vignetting, what it will mean is if I were to then crop this again, it will apply the vignette to that crop after. Oh, it's still got a load of grain. Oh, yuck, never mind. No matter how I crop it, it's going to add a vignette to that crop, which is brilliant because it doesn't mean you have to kind of undo a crop and then redo a crop. No, no, no. It's post crop vignetting. It's brilliant. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Calibration, again, is not for this course. This is not something I've done, and I'm not going to go into it. What I would suggest, if you're interested in calibration, yeah, you're going to have to go to YouTube. There's plenty of videos on calibration. This is not something I've ever done. It's not something I'm interested in, and yeah, it's not something I can really comment on, unfortunately, for you guys. But pretty much you can do loads of stuff without going into that. So that's it for the rest of the panels. And yeah, I hope that that was helpful.